Hi, I'm Holly from Accrual Mistress Bookkeeping and Consulting, and today I thought we could take a few minutes to dive into bank feeds in QuickBooks Online. So, first and foremost, what are bank feeds? Basically, it is a way for us to connect our bank accounts to QuickBooks Online so that certain information flows through. So we can connect checking accounts, savings accounts, credit cards, and some types of loans, just kind of depending on their structure, so that transactions will flow through from the financial institutions into our QuickBooks file. Now, when we attach our bank feeds in QuickBooks, we are not giving QuickBooks license to access all the information about our banks. We're not necessarily giving it the permission to make transfers on our behalf or do anything like that. What we are authorizing it to get is reporting level data. So what will flow through if we establish our bank feeds in QuickBooks? Well, we will get the date that the transaction occurs, the dollar amount of the transaction, we will get the bank detail, and of course, whether or not it's an in or out money transaction. So QuickBooks pulls all that information. There's usually about a 24 to 48 hour lag between when a transaction runs and when it shows up in our bank feed, sometimes a little bit more over weekends. But all of that information flows through. So let's look at where it comes when it comes into our QuickBooks file. If we go over here to accounting and select bank transactions, that's where we're going to go to access our bank feed. Now, this is just the sample company that QuickBooks has online. So if you ever want to kind of play with this and see what it's like, you're welcome to use this as a sandbox. If you just Google QuickBooks Online Sample Company, this will come up and you can see all of these transactions as well. So these are the sample transactions that QuickBooks has that you can play with. But I do want to call your attention to a couple of different items here. So first, and we won't unfortunately be able to link any accounts because this is just a sandbox file. But if I wanted to link an additional account in my own file, I would simply go up to this button right here that says Link Account, and I would click on it. And that would take me to this page. Now, this page allows me to pick from a preset list of banks, or if I have a specific bank, I can enter their URL or their name here and then search for them. So one that my clients often use is First Northern Bank, and their URL is that'smybank.com. So if I click that'smybank.com, it pulls up First Northern Bank. Now, I will say, if your bank is kind of an odd bank, and when I say odd, I mean not a large national chain, if it's a smaller regional bank, I have yet to come across any bank where you cannot connect the account via bank feed in QuickBooks, but never say never. I'm sure it can happen. So with that in mind, if you can't find your bank when you do a search, take the URL for your institution's sign-in page and copy it in here and then search. It should come up. And then if you click on this, it will take you to your organization's sign-in page where you will have the option to jump through a few hoops. You're going to have to enter your username and password for the banking information. And then you can select which accounts you would like to connect to QuickBooks Online. Something really important here, if I were you, I would only connect business bank accounts. I would not connect personal bank accounts to your QuickBooks business file. So that's just one little piece of advice. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you go through the process of connecting a bank feed, there are several other questions that might be asked of you. First, if you have multiple different accounts, they might ask you to map those accounts. So in some cases, you can link them to existing accounts that are already on your chart of accounts. And in other cases, you might have to create an account on your chart of accounts, at which point it's only going to ask you what the overall account type is: checking, savings, credit card, what have you. The last thing to keep in mind when you are establishing your bank feed is that you're going to want to know the date that you want this to take effect as of. So, if we're looking at this year, we're already in December currently, but you could be doing this at any time of year. Think about when you want these accounts connected. If you just started your business, maybe you only need to go back to the beginning of the month. If you've had your business for 6 months and you need to bring in all of that data, you'd want to know the date that you started the account so that you could pull that information. Now, some banks do have a limit on the amount of information that you can bring in via this particular channel. If you can't bring in all the data that you need by linking the account through this channel, you can actually export your banking information from your financial institution and import it into QuickBooks. And I'll show you how right now. So I'm going to close out of this because I don't actually need to do that right now. And in order to import information, what I would want to do is select the caret next to link account instead, and then say upload from file. Now, at this point, there are only a certain number of file types that we can import into QuickBooks Online. One is a .QBO file, and a lot of banks and financial institutions do allow you to export data in a .QBO file, but not all of them do. So you'll want to check into that a little bit. If they do not have a .QBO file, you can oftentimes export a .CSV file and import that. But you will need a little bit of additional information if you're working with a .CSV file, including whether or not the dollar amounts are in one column or two, and the overall date code, meaning is the date, the month, two-digit day, four-digit year? Is it two-digit month, two-digit day, two-digit year? Keep that in mind because QuickBooks will ask you so that when it pulls information from that CSV file, it's pulling it in correctly. All right, so once you have your bank feeds set up and once you have information flowing through like we have in this particular instance, we have the option to start classifying it. Now, one thing that I want to call your attention to here is that just because a transaction is showing up here doesn't mean that we want to automatically go ahead and add it, classify it, apply a rule to it, whatever it happens to be. Sometimes transactions should be recorded through the holistic QuickBooks system. This primarily arises if we are using QuickBooks for more than just generating a profit and loss and balance sheet. If we're sending invoices to our clients through QuickBooks, if we are entering bills in QuickBooks, and we want to be able to match all of that up with the financial data that's coming through our bank feed, we may have to go through some extra steps to ensure that those items are being matched up correctly. And I will be doing a supplemental video down the road to explain that whole process. But this one here is mostly just to focus on bank feeds, what they're doing for you, and how you can connect them. All right, so all that in mind, at this point, you could go ahead and start classifying transactions. One thing to keep in mind is that when you are here in this bank transactions tab, none of these transactions are reflected on any of your reports. They are all in a holding place until you classify them, categorize them, assign them a payee, assign them a category, whether that be expense or income category in QuickBooks. And then once you click add, that's when they get transferred to your bank register and then start to show up on your reports. There are also several different categories here that you might want to pay attention to. The first is transactions that are still for review. That's anything that you still need to pay attention to before you move the transaction forward. Then you have categorized and excluded, okay? There are different reasons why you might use each of these, but it's just good to know that there might be transactions in additional buckets instead of just the one that you're in. Another really useful tool that exists here is the ability to filter transactions. So I can filter these transactions by a specific date window. I could do a search for a particular check number or a particular dollar amount. And I can filter by the type of transaction, money in, money out, transfers, anything like that, okay? Additionally, in the overall bank feeds ecosystem, we have a few other items. All of these right here that are part of accounting kind of play a role in the bank feeds ecosystem, so it never hurts to familiarize yourself with those. I will, however, be doing a deep dive into each of these items in later videos. So if you found this useful, please like and subscribe and let me know which video you would most like to see next. I'm Holly, I'm the owner of Accrual Mistress Bookkeeping and Consulting, and I hope you have a fantastic day.